Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits, where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us to unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets to effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Hey, and welcome back, nerds. Today, I am honored to introduce you to Laine Seaton. Laine and I go years back, maybe even a few decades, if I'm being honest. She is a total rock star here in our local community, where she has served on the board and even held the president's title for our local AFP chapter. Laine is not new to the sector, but she is fairly new to being a consultant. And in this conversation, she shares with me and you about her entrepreneur life and how she has worked to find that perfect work-life blend. And before we dive into the conversation with Laine, I want to give a shout out of gratitude to this season's sponsors. Thank you, Nonprofits HQ and Chazen & Company. And without further delay, please enjoy Laine's conversation.
Well, hello there. I am so thrilled to have with me today someone whom I've had the great pleasure of knowing for quite some time. We live in the same, I'm going to say metro community, because we're not quite neighbors, but we definitely do have the ability to get together, hug each other in person, have a cocktail or some coffee. But Laine Seaton is with me today. And Laine, I always like to start off with this first question, which is, what are some of the names you go by? I mean, obviously I just gave out, your name, but what are some of the other names that you go by in this world?
Well, good question. And thank you, Jarrett, for having me on your awesome podcast. This is great. Great to see you today. My official name is Laine, but I'm actually, to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of my name. I really even don't know how my parents came up with it. They actually were going to name me Shannon at one point, and I'm not sure when the change happened, but it's just because I get a lot of questions like, what, like, how do you spell that? And it always just brings up a lot of confusion, which is just frankly a pain. And so I, often I'll say, well, it's like Elaine without the E, or I don't know. It just sort of can be annoying. I will say, growing up, I think because of that, in grade school, kids, they would call me Lainey, and like my mom, and sometimes she would call me that too. So it is a little bit of a term of endearment. If someone, calls me that, I'm immediately like 10 years old again, and I'm like, okay, who knows me here? So yeah,
I love that.
yeah, that's a little bit of backstory to
That is
that.
That's so good. And I've got to tell you, so Jarrett, obviously my name, right? Same thing. People mess it up. They're like Janet, or they'll say, well, what do you go by? And I'm like, I go by Jarrett. Like that's my name, right? But ironically, same thing. My parents told me, well, if you were a boy, we were going to name you Joseph. And I'm like, well, if I was a boy, you still could have named me Jarrett.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that's right.
So I love hearing that backstory. You have other names, right? Are there any others that you kind of like take on more or less in the community world?
Like the hats, different hats that I wear, or
What are some of those hats?
well, um, I mean, first and foremost, I'm a grant writer and consultant. Been in nonprofit, mostly fundraising for about 22 years now. So that's sort of the major hat that I wear. But wife to my awesome husband, Chris. I'm also dog mom, dog mom to our little min pin Zoe. We had two other awesome pets that left us too soon, our little boy Shep and cat named Nixie. But so pet mom. Also a friend to many friends, so grateful for, and aunt as well to my niece and nephew, Liz and Johan. Um, so yeah, so a lot of hats that way. I used to be really involved in volunteering a lot for AFP, our Greater Arizona chapter. So I was on the board. I headed up a couple of committees. So that was several years ago. So really involved there. And I've pulled back a little bit since. So yeah, definitely kept busy. So still wear a lot of hats, just not the same hats, I think.
That is a lot of hats. And I love
Yeah.
it because you're so, and again, I get the privilege of seeing you in the community, out and about, at different events, and to also have privilege to know your personal side and then learning more about the family connections and dynamics that you have, and also hold those so close. Um, I'm going to hold on to, you have been in the industry 20 plus years, right? Did I hear 22? Is that the number?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But you're new in the consulting world. So you took this on what, just a couple of years ago?
Yeah, this 2024 is my second full year consulting.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And probably listeners, when you're hearing this, it's probably 2025. So you're moving on into, that would be year 3. What is that, right? Or is there a
Mhm.
specific month that you're
That's
like,
right.
now's when I turn the calendar page?
Technically, oh Lord, it would be, I think, February 1st,
Okay. Yeah.
2025.
So it's coming.
If you want to get
Yeah.
technical. So yes, year 3 is next year.
Okay, well, let's talk about this, Laine, because you are not new to doing the work that you're doing. That is clear. And again, all of your involvement with AFP, which for those of you listening, I'm sure you've heard of it, Association of Fundraising Professionals, nationally. Actually, it's international, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, check that out because I'm guarantee you there's a local chapter either in your community or super close by. So you've been juggling all of the things from personal commitments, professional commitments, 20 plus years, but most recently 2 going on 3, or maybe now 3 as we're, dropping this episode. How have you managed all of the commitments between your personal life, your professional life? What does that look like for you?
Really good question. Um, it's a lot. I think like for everybody, we're all super busy. Um, I think honestly, even just looking at, email, most everybody has email. Just that alone can be so overwhelming. You're just bombarded with like, 50 plus, 100 plus emails a day. Um, and just that can be overwhelming for me to just like, oh, I need to get back to that, or I need to read that. I try to work at keeping that at bay as best as I can. Um, but yeah, it's a lot to juggle. For me, really my work, I love my work. It's deadline driven. And so I never miss a deadline with, grants or reports. So my work is really my top priority. Like in for the most part in my life, my work is really important to me, and coming through for my clients. Um, so looking at those priorities every day and the deadlines. And then for everything else, really family, I'm thinking like prep preparations for holidays and birthdays, like getting the cards and sending the things in time, like we just did for Thanksgiving. Um, it's planning ahead for me. I'm a big like list maker, and I have my lined notebook here is what I use all the time, sort of for my management organization. And so planning ahead, putting things on the calendar, That really helps me. Um, what I really like, among other things with the consulting, is that I can do some personal appointments during the day, or like during the weekday, that I don't have to cram it in at odd hours. So getting those scheduled, just getting them on the calendar, just making time for that. Also, I'm much better in a morning person than afternoon. So I'm much more like fresh. So if there's important things that I need to get out of the way, I'll get them done in the morning. Um, so yeah, that's in terms of commitments, that's a lot how I manage it, is writing things down, planning ahead, doing things in the morning, but definitely taking that time also to recharge.
Yeah. So much of what you said resonated with me. I am also a lister, right? Like I list everything out. Although as I look at my desk right here around me, Laine, I will admit I have multiple lists. So I feel like I should have one. But I also love that you're a planner, right? And you manage your calendar, your commitments so that you can plan. But I can imagine, because I've been there too, when you're juggling multiple clients, you're juggling multiple deadlines, you're juggling other people's schedules, right? What are some, I don't know, tools, that you've put into place? Because again, none of this is new. Like you did this as an employee, an FTE, full-time employee for the longest time. And now switching into this consultancy role, I can only imagine so many people listening are saying, wow, either I want to do that, I want to be a consultant and take my time and my schedule so that, I can make some medical appointments or personal appointments during the middle of the day and not have to cram them into the weekends. But like, what are some of the things that you find have been your go-to when it comes to managing your clients' deadlines, like you said, deadline driven, and then multiple schedules within your clients? What does that look like?
It really is. It sounds so simple, but it's not really. But like I mentioned about my list that I make, that I use sort of a basic notebook in terms of, like, every month I work on a month to month basis. And for each of my clients, we do have a grant tracker, like basically a calendar spreadsheet that's goes throughout the year, and it's broken out month by month of sort of what are the grants that are coming up that month. So for a given client, I'll be working on at least five, like 4 to 5 grants or reports every month. And most of those do have hard deadlines. So I have that on the spreadsheet, but also on my in my notebook. And so I know every month sort of what's coming up, what's the top priority for that month that I need to work on. Um, and then really work ahead. I usually try to get things done like a week, maybe 2 weeks early with the deadline, so it's not rushed. Um, and whatever information I need, say if it's a new grant or project coming up that's a little bit unfamiliar, I'll build in time to gather that information. And if that's like looking at some content or scheduling a call, I actually have an example of that coming up. There's a grant due in about a month. That's a brand new project, and so we're scheduling a call with the client next week to go over all of that content. So building in that prep time is key. That's really important to build in that prep time. So it's like a sort of managing your pace. It's like setting your pace and moving things around if you need, but just really knowing, building that time in, that cushion that you need, so that you're not rushed at the end.
So smart. I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
buffer time, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so many clients I've worked with, and even, in that full-time capacity, once in a blue moon in my life, I have had full-time, employment roles, but working with the team, because you're right, we're all so busy. We all have personal commitments, professional commitments, but we cannot miss these deadlines. I I missed a deadline this week, actually, and thankfully it was not a grant deadline. So it was something that, could still be worked on. And it wasn't even, I mean, it was for a client. It wasn't for like a funder in your case kind of thing. But I was just so hard on myself because I usually do the same thing. I will manage my calendar. I will put it in as this is the day it's due, which, side note, it's usually the day prior because that way I'm delivering early.
Yeah.
But I also tend to put on my calendar, and I'm talking digital calendar, is time blocks to work on that item prior to it being due, right? And in this case that I'm sharing, I did not put a time block to work on it. I completely skipped that. So does that ever happen with you where like maybe you've time blocked something to sit down, remove all distractions, focus on one thing, and then you just get completely sidetracked into, oops, that didn't happen?
Yeah, it does. It does. I try to plan out in the morning, and this sort of goes into the self-care area. But in the morning when I'm taking my walks, I'll be thinking about the day and what are my priorities for that day and what are the things that I want to work on. And again, being the most sort of like fresh and sharp in the morning. And so what are like, if it's something that I really need intense concentration for, then I'll choose to work on that. But things do come up, like emergencies might come up. Things do get in the way or other distractions. And so you try to keep those at bay and get back on track as best as you can. Yeah, so
It
hopefully
does
that
happen. Well, I love
helps.
that
Yeah.
you mentioned self-care. I do know you're a big walker. That's probably something you do with your husband and your men pen. But what are some of the other things you
Yeah.
do for self-care and even relaxation?
Yeah. It's it's really, really important. I've definitely felt that more in the last couple of years, just being older, getting older, how important that is for um just for your energy and like your mental well-being too. So a couple of things over this current year, I've really focused on my health a lot more and losing some weight. I just wasn't feeling so great about that. And so at the beginning of this year, I did a whole lot of research for a couple of months, and through trial and error, finally found some great health support that I've worked. So that's a major like bucket list accomplishment that I did this year.
Huge.
Finally, so really glad about that. But that I made that a priority this year, and I've kept that up. But yeah, paying attention to that, drinking a lot of water, keeping that throughout the day, the diet, just being conscious of that. Also, sleep is huge. I tend to get insomnia a lot. I can fall asleep, but then I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I can fall asleep again eventually, but that disruption really sort of messes up your next day. And it sort of goes in patterns. I can go through for a while really good with my sleep, and then something triggers, and then I'm just really bad for a couple of weeks or months. So working on keeping that steady is really important. So the sleep thing, but also, yeah, a lot of walks. I try to take walk breaks during the day, like 4 or 5 during the day. Um, and then like in the morning, but then at the end of my workday, it's really nice to just unplug and sort of shake off the day and walk. We live in a really nice neighborhood in Arrowhead Lakes. And so a lot of really pretty walking paths. And there's like a duck pond. So like all the birds and the swans and the ducks and stuff are all over there, which is sort of fun to see them. So it's really relaxing to like de-stress is at the end of the day is to do those walks. And I do like podcasts. I like listening, but a lot of a lot of them are political. So sometimes I'm like, it's not the greatest for my mental health to be listening to those walking, catching up on, the political podcasts, but I don't know.
Yeah, but find your thing. And what I love,
Yeah.
and you even said this earlier with managing personal and professional commitments, but I'm hearing it also, Laine, with your self-care, relaxation, even some things, maybe you do for fun. It doesn't have to take a lot. Some of these are
Yeah.
pretty basic and simple. So, whether you're keeping a list on pen and paper, whether your, self-care is taking walks. I mean, I am so proud of you for taking 4 to 5 a day. I'm lucky if I take one, and that's not good, right? Like, I will look at my step count at the end of the day and I'm like, whoa, I should have gotten up out of my seat more. I should have like taken the dog for a walk. So I love that you're doing this. And I just like kudos to you, because it does show that it doesn't have to be so cumbersome or so elaborate. Like, look at the basics here that we do have available.
It's really true. Yeah, I sort of chunk it out. It actually I see it sort of as like a little treat in a way. It's not the walk breaks. It's not so much like um like a task or a burden. If I'm working on maybe an intense grant and I finished like one big narrative question that was a little bit sort of like a heavy lift, I'm like, okay, I can do my walk right now. Like I'll do like a little goal and I'll finish that paragraph or that section, and then I'll take a break. And it's really nice. It's nice. It's a little treat. And then I'm sort of, my mind is refreshed and I can get back to the computer. So that's sort of how I see it.
I need to take that from you, because that is a lesson I need to do more of, and I take it for granted. So thank you, because that's a
Sure.
huge reminder for me. Um, we are coming up on some of our final questions, and the time's just flying by. We could talk forever, but I know that you do love to travel. So when was your last trip, or when is your next trip that you have coming up? What does that look like?
Well, we recently came back from a pretty big trip. We went to Japan for about 2 weeks. And that was fantastic. It was great to be back there. I used to live there in the 90s, actually. So, it had been a while being back there. My husband has some extended family there, so it was really nice to see them. It was a great trip, I will have to say. Um, it was really busy because we were traveling all throughout the country. So we stayed in like 8 or 9 hotels and all of these train, transfers and
Connections, and yeah.
lugging the suitcases and the train stations and the stairs. So it was a lot. So I think it wasn't a very calming Zen kind of trip, but it was fun. I think we are looking ahead at travel for next year. We would like to go back to Japan, but our happy place is Hawaii. And so we're trying to see, okay, maybe could we do both? Because we try to go to Hawaii every year, but we didn't this year. So we're like, okay, maybe can we squeeze it in? But then a third thing, I have family in Florida, and so I want to try to get in a Florida trip next year too. So I don't know. I don't, we'll try to see what we can do.
All the things. Well, I love asking that question, because I know so many people are like, I haven't taken a vacation in years, or this is the first vacation I've taken in a really long time. And I'm a little envious of your Japan trip. Like, and I also love seeing your Hawaii photos. So both of those are great places, and I can absolutely see why you would want to go back to both of them. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Laine, you have shared so many great nuggets of insight, so many. I'm going to say it again. I know I'm repeating myself, but like, your resources, your tools, the things that have helped you are often at everyone's fingertips, right? Like, we probably already have them. And so again, it's just a great reminder that we don't have to add complexity to this. Like, go back to basics, go back to the things that we've likely used for a very long time, because chances are they served us then and they'll continue to serve us now. So where can people find out more information about you, Laine? Because you do so much like great work, not only here in our community, but in the sector. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not as active as I used to be on LinkedIn, but you can see a lot of my work there. I do have a personal Facebook page as well. But for my grant work, you can go to my site, Greater Grants. So it's greater-grants.com.
greater-grants.com. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love following you on Facebook. It's those personal videos that you share. It's either makeup or puppies or something really funny that makes me laugh. And I love it because that's, for me, it's a good brain break too. It
Yeah.
inserts some humor and some fun. Well, last question, Laine. Any final words of wisdom or advice, perhaps, that you'd like to leave our listeners today? And I don't know, maybe there's someone listening that's thinking, I want to move into the consultancy space, or maybe like you, they recently did it as well, kind of similar timeline, 2-3 years. So any final words or advice?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, consulting is great. If you have a skill, a marketable skill, like this, I would say definitely try it, use your network and try it, because the work-life balance is so much better, than it usually is, working 8 to 5 at a place. But also, I'd say just give yourself a break. I know I have to tell myself that when I feel so much pressure and that I feel like I'm not doing enough, or, letting people down, or sort of the risk of letting people down. Just really break it down, like give yourself a break, and step by step, even if it's just one thing in the day that you do, like, you will get through it. And I tell myself this, you will get through it. And just chip away at it. You don't have to take on everything at once. And you're probably your worst critic than other people are. So these are lessons that I'm having to tell myself.
Chef's kiss. Perfect. Again, like that simple reminder that we all need to hear. So, Laine, thank you truly for everything you do to strengthen our local community, but also these nuggets of wisdom and insights and such sage advice. So thank you for joining me today. And I wish you all the best in year 3 for your business. So keep up the great work.
Thank you, Jarrett.